Okay, let's get on to the most exciting topic of the day, management. Management is really all about systems. And again, thanks to our speaker this morning, I think you've perhaps already got an idea of the importance of systems. So what is a system? A system, I mean, we use this word all the time, right? But a system is really just an interconnection of things, okay? I'm not going to overcomplicate it any more than that, okay? It's an interconnection of things. And those things can include things such as machines, technology, for example, people, of course, processes, standards that we covered on People Day when we were all in the room. And the point in connecting all of these things is to get shit done. And that's why we have a system. But it's to create reliable repetition, and better systems can produce better outcomes. And that's the goal of a system, is to produce specific outcomes. Systems save you stress, time, energy, and money. So a system is designed to produce outcomes, and there are 3 outcomes specifically that we are hunting for. Now, there will be lots of sub-details to the outcomes that you're trying to race for in a business, but ultimately they denominate to one of these 3, which is profit, productivity, and value. Value here is value for your customer. That is what your business system as a whole system at a macro level is there to do. It is there to drive profit to your bottom line, otherwise it's not a viable business. It's there to drive value to your customer, otherwise you don't have any customers and you don't have a business. And productivity is everything that sits in between. It is the engine house of your business that is making everything more efficient, make everything move smoothly, make everything move quicker. And as an output of that central productivity engine, you push either value to your customer or profit to your bottom line. These are the 3 outcomes that we are driving for in every business. That is what your management systems should be producing at an outcome level. But there are specific actions to management. And the amazing thing about management is it's been studied for so many years that it has been distilled down to 18 different actions, and those 18 different actions is what we're going to go through and audit in your business, and they just go into they fall into 3 camps, which are setting targets, establishing incentives, and then monitoring the performance so that you can drive better performance. And those 18 activities in those 3 little areas, those 18 actions fall into 4 core management systems. We have operations management, we have performance management, talent management, and the setting of targets. So don't worry about writing all that down. I will share all these slides with you. This is just to give you an overview of the structure. But we're looking at 4 core management systems. Within those management systems are these 18 actions, and we're going to score those 1 to 5. And this has been studied around the world since 2002 by a non-profit called the World Management Survey. The World Management Survey has had more than 100,000 submissions from countries in every corner of the globe and businesses in every sector. The stats here are stats that are collected by a team of analysts that go and do interviews in specific countries, and then they produce reports, and they produce reports based on 4 sectors. But there are submissions from a couple of 100,000 companies around the globe. They've now covered 38 countries. I hadn't updated the slides, but they've done this in 38 countries. But there are submissions from every country in the world. But what's important to know is that a 1-point increment on the management score on this survey is associated with 27% increase in productivity. That's huge. 27% increase in productivity, 5% increase in market share, and 2% increase in sales growth. Not in sales, but in sales growth, compounding. And 10% improvement in return on capital employed. That's a technical term for some of us. Not for you, but a 10% improvement in return on capital employed, simply by sharpening the saw by a 1-point increase in these 4 core management systems. The impact of good management is incredible. And the great thing about it is it can be learned. It can all be learned. So what I want you to do, it's the next page over in your book. It's a 2-page spread. What we're going to do is a management audit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through each of these 18 activities of management. We're going to do it by one system at a time. So we're going to take a little breather as we do each of the 4 management systems. I'm going to give you a description of what it is. I know the writing's on the page, but I'll give you a quick overview. And same as what we did in the previous exercise, I want you to give yourself a score 1 to 5. Now, if you really want to delve into this, you can go onto the World Management Survey and you can look at the criteria for what a 1 is, what a 2 is, 3, 4, 5. There's specific criteria. For now, don't worry, subjective, finger in the air, get a measure, temperature checked, where you think you are 1 to 5. 1 is rubbish, 5 is we're kicking butt and we're absolutely crushing it. So we're going to start with operations management. So first box on the page. I should say, by the way, what we're also doing here is we're giving yourself a score, and we also want you to write down who is the person that's responsible for doing this as an awareness piece of whether it's being done at all. And I know it's okay that sometimes that box is going to be empty, but please remember, if that box is empty, it means that it's you doing it, or actually worse, it's nobody doing it. So you're going to give yourself a score, and if somebody else is doing it, then put their name or their initial in that box. Or if you think that there's maybe somebody else in your business that should be doing it, and they need to maybe do it better, put their name in that box. Any questions about how we're scoring? Okay. So let's get started with operations management. And there's only really 2 activities that cover operations management, and that is the effective use of systems and the standardization of processes. So these words often get mixed in, and I don't want to overcomplicate the sort of semantics of what the difference is, but systems is the more higher level. The systems are the interconnections of things, but the processes are how we do things. Now, systems might be individual systems. You might have a system maybe for running your orders, or for how you operate your projects. You might have a project management system, but processes will often span all of these and cut right across the company. How we go from getting a lead to how we go from getting the job done. Processes are codified knowledge. So it's taking what we have learned in how to do things, their hows, how we do things, best practice, codifying that in a way that it can be repeated. And systems are the framework that allow us to run the business. So they're 2 slightly different things. And if you're still confused, don't worry, just put down the same score for 2. But give yourself a score for whether you have the effective use of systems, which means that you've effectively chosen the right systems, implemented them, train people on them, and they're being used to their maximal capability. And with processes, again, it means that you found out the way to do things the best way to sell, the best way to deliver, the best way to invoice, the best way to collect money, the best way to do everything. And then you've codified that so that everybody can relentlessly repeat that process, that best way of doing things. So give yourself a score for effective use of systems and standardization of processes, and who is ultimately responsible for ensuring that the 2 are being done well and being maintained. And performance monitoring starts where we finished off with operations management, with effective implementation and operation of the processes. The first part of performance monitoring is making sure that all of our processes are documented. Because if they're not documented, if a process is simply you've shown somebody how to do it, that doesn't scale. It can work if you've shown one person, but eventually you get Chinese whispers. And if it goes off track, you've got nothing to refer to say, well, you missed step 3. Well, you didn't tell me step 3. I did tell you step 3. So do you have process documentation is absolutely critical. And from our documented processes, we can then set up, and what's the key sort of part of performance monitoring is that we are able to then track the performance of these processes with KPIs. That we're able to put numbers in place. We're able to say, well, now that we have this documented process, that we can see that it should take X number of hours, X number of days, or however long this process should take. Well, this is what the input should be. This is what the output should be. So are we able to track performance of our processes and monitor them with KPIs? And although that will be effective, the real power of documenting and tracking our processes comes when we review the performance of those KPIs. Because if we don't really sit down and we don't take the time to analyze the data and discuss it, see how this month compared to against a previous month and against targets, then it's simply numbers on a dashboard, which does have some power, as I gave in my example of going through security the other day. But if nobody reviews that data, then it loses its potency. And so we have to sit down and review that data and have a dialogue, have a conversation, have a meeting where we review what we see in the data. And the final step of performance monitoring, and the piece that most people are hesitant to put into place, is to put in consequences for missing targets. What happens if we don't hit targets? Because if everybody still gets exactly the same outcome and there's no consequence for missing a target, then there's also no motivation to drive towards what that target is. What are those consequences? There are consequences for you, there are consequences for the business, there are consequences for your customers. Our third management system is effectively setting targets. We have to set targets. We all have some sort of strategy. At the very least, you know that you want to grow, but you hopefully have a clearer picture of where you want to get to in the future. And that will include, hopefully should include, clear and specific targets. So the first part of target setting is your choice of targets. How do you choose targets? Target setting should not be completely arbitrary. Target setting should be aligned with your strategy. Target setting is in effect an exercise in creating a staircase that moves towards your goal. So how do you choose targets is a clear and actionable step of management. And what's absolutely critical is that it's connected to the strategy so that your team can see its connection to the long-term goal. Again, so that the target is not arbitrary, so they can see where you're going. So they can understand the meaning of the target so that it is more than just a number. If we hit these goals, then we can open another barbershop. If we hit these goals, we can develop a new product. If we hit these goals, we can be rated the best in the country or whatever it might be to you. Connect that to the strategy, which also means that all of your targets should have an appropriate goal time horizon. What does that mean? Different people think in very different time spans, and different businesses think in very different time spans as well. If you're in medical research, then your goal time horizon could be 10 years. Whereas clearly in airport security, the goal time horizon is probably the length of a shift or something like that. Different businesses, different strategies, different goal time horizons, different staff at different skill levels will also have different time horizons. Somebody senior in your business may be looking very much at a year goal. Other people may be looking simply at a number for how many processes they can run this day or this week. So having an appropriate goal time horizon, both for your strategy and also for the level of the employee within your business, is absolutely key. And as is the level of challenge. Again, this will have a lot to do with the seniority and the level of skill of each individual employee. But what is the level of challenge? Is it appropriate? Does it stretch that person but not overstretch that person? Everybody likes to have a feeling of achievement, but nobody likes things to be too easy. So getting this right is important in driving execution. And the final action within target setting is having clarity of your goals and clarity of your measurement. And the key word here is not about the goals and the measurement. The key word here is about the clarity. And this is where it comes back to dashboards, it comes back to visibility, is that if people don't have clarity on how they're performing, so you've got clarity on what it is that your target is, but if they don't have feedback on how they're performing, then it would just be meaningless. And if I use that example again of airport security, if all the staff in the airport said, look, the goal is to have 300 people per hour walk through your scanner, but they never saw the data on that, nobody's going to count the people. And at the end of the month, they're told you didn't go quick enough. It would just be meaningless. But with the visibility, it brings the clarity and it gamifies it as well. Our final and fourth management system is talent management. First part of talent management, the absolutely essential core foundation of talent management, is that you have a talent mindset at every level of your business. We covered this in our People Day, the importance of having A players, the importance of talent density, the importance of not tolerating mediocrity. And that starts not in the middle of the organization, not at the leadership team, but with you. If you don't have a talent mindset, then you will not go out there and be driven to hire A-player managers at the next level of your business. And if they don't have a talent mindset, if they tolerate mediocrity, then they will hire just anybody that's got a pulse at the next level of the business. And it will actually weaken as it goes down. So it's critical that you have a talent mindset at every level of the organization. It's also important for talent that you have stretch goals and incentives. So some of the aspects of target setting in the target setting section of just a moment ago can often be about team goals, but with talent management, it's very much about individual. So are individuals being stretched and incentivized? And incentives are the opposite of consequences, okay? So we have to have both sides of that. How do we incentivize people to move towards our stretch goals? What are the consequences when goals are not met? And therefore, critically, how do we manage low performance? Are people trained? Are people demoted? Are people fired? Are people moved to a different role? How do we manage low performance? Do we have a process for that? Because if we don't have a process for that and it's being done inconsistently, or it's simply not being done throughout the business, you have an opportunity cost. You've got a drain on the business in that the goals aren't being met. You've got a further drain on the business that you've now got to manage that low performance. But if it's not being effectively dealt with, then you've got somebody filling a seat and taking a salary that could otherwise be a high performer. So we have to manage low performance. And it's not always simply a case of firing people. Sometimes that might be the right decision. But a key part of talent management will be talent development. How are we developing people? I love it when we have a speaker in the morning that speaks to so many of these points. The training involved in that man's business is incredible. That there is training going on from as soon as people come into the business to give them the skills, not just the practical skills, but also the interpersonal skills as well. So what talent development are you doing? Not setting time aside for some talent development is eventually going to create a barrier to growth in your business. Yes, we want to hire the very highest skilled people, but there is always a need to develop as well. Right now in your businesses, and Pat, I mean, how many people are doing some sort of basic training in their business on AI? Okay, amazing. So probably about half of you. And it may not be relevant to everybody in the business, but these are new things that are coming along, right? So we have to always do talent development. The question is whether we structure it and ensure that people are taking it to the level that we require within the business. But informal is still better than doing nothing at all. Our penultimate activity in talent management is, do we have an employee value proposition? And what I mean by employee value proposition rather than customer value proposition is there something enticing about coming to work in your business? Is the culture something that inspires people? Because you have high performers, because you have other talented people within your business, because of your core values, because of your mission, because of where you want to get to, because of what you stand for, because of where you work, because of what you do in the community. Any and all of those. Is there a proposition to people that are potentially going to come and work in your business that says this is a place for you? And then the final piece is that employee value proposition strong enough? And are we doing other things within our business to retain talent? Because all of this adds up to very little if we bleed the best staff and they go out into the marketplace to work for somebody else for whatever reason. And if you've got A players, if you've got the very best talent, you've spent the time developing them and they're performing, you obviously want to also work on retaining them within your business. As with the previous exercise, it's not just about low numbers, because it's very much about where you are in your business. It's really about what is negatively impacting you right now. Where is a weakness causing you some pain? Write down your ideas for action. So based on the areas that are hurting the most, and again, use your leadership skill of prioritization. Do not write 100 ideas. Rather go into one idea and go deep on how you can improve this and what positive impact that change will have.